Joe Doyle tells us why he thinks the Mariners may have just had their best draft ever under Scott Hunter, coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. This is Ty and Colby for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and my co-host Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. On today's show, we're talking draft, we're talking farm system, and we're talking trade deadline with the one and only Mr. Joe Doyle. Let's get into it. Jumping back on with us is Joe Doyle of Future Stars Series and Overslot, the MLB Draft Podcast. It's only been a couple weeks since we last talked with you, Joe, but obviously a lot's happened since. So, looking forward to diving a bit more into this Mariners draft and also talk a little bit about the farm leading up to the deadline with you.
Yeah, man. Good to be back. Been doing this show for like 4 or 5 years. I love you guys.
For sure. And we love the insight that you bring as always. You were just on with TJ and Lyle on the Marine Layer podcast. So I don't want to just rehash that interview. Everyone should check that out. You talked a lot about the Mariners top picks on there. So Colby and I want to talk a little bit more about some of the deeper cuts in this draft. But first, just kind of like an overall type of question here. When we last had you on, we talked about the large bonus pool and all the options the Mariners had available to them. How well do you feel they navigated that in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I said on that other podcast with TJ and Lyle that I think this is the best draft that Scott Hunter has put together in his time, at least, in the time that I've been seriously covering it, going back to 2018. I think this is the most complete draft that they have thrown together. I think there's ceiling, there's floor, there's upside, there's varying demographics. Seattle filled holes in the organization that they needed to fill, even though that's not something you actively go out to do. Going and grabbing 3 college catchers to provide you the leverage to move Harry forward, if that's what you want to do, is a very, very sound way to go about acquiring players. So, yeah, I think from a just a process and talent acquisition standpoint, best draft I've seen from Scott Hunter so far, and it's especially impressive because this is not the best draft class, like the best draft in general that we've seen.
Not that it really matters, and ultimately, the way that things played out is my preference, but do you have a sense of what they were going to do had Cade not fallen to them at 3?
Everything I was hearing, even from inside the organization, the night prior, was it was going to be a bidding war between Seth Hernandez and Tyler Bremner. They were both represented by the same agency, 2 different agents, but they were represented by the same agency. I ultimately think that Tyler Bremner was going to be the pick. I think he was going to be a massive underslot deal at 3. I know that Kylie reported something similar the next night after I posted that final mock draft. So it was being talked about in, multiple different avenues. So yeah, it would have been interesting to see what Seattle would have done with all that extra money. I mean, they would have probably saved $1.2 million more than they saved on Cade Anderson. And I almost struggle to find the high school prospects that they would have been able to acquire with all that money. You got to spend it. So yeah, I think it would have been Bremner.
Do you think they would have maybe taken the shot on Appenzeller then?
I've heard Appenzeller's number is like $4.5 million. I really don't think there's going to be much that's going to sway him away from Tennessee. I actually think the reason they took Appenzeller in the 19th round was because he was one of the few like massive dollar prospects that was even left on the board as an insurance policy. Right. So I don't think Appenzeller with 35 or 57 was actually going to be the practice.
Gotcha. Colby, what do you got for Joe?
Yeah. I'm really curious about the 2 pitchers Seattle took, not Cade Anderson. I feel like we have a pretty good idea of who Cade Anderson is, but Griffin Hughes and Mason Peters. I know you're pretty high on Peters relative to the reaction of most others, but what can you tell us about these 2 guys? Why are they Mariner-y, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, but I mean, they are conventionally Mariners-y. I mean, if you go back and look at the 2024 draft, it was actually kind of stunning to me that Seattle went so heavy on the sinker ballers, the heavy fastballers. At the top of the drafts, at rounds 11 through 20, they were taking guys that could really sink the ball, which isn't really what they've had a lot of success with in the last, go back to Kirby Gilbert. Like, they're not sinker ballers, they're four seamer guys. Hughes is that 6'2", 190. Fastball really blows up at the top of the zone. It's a lower than league average slot, and it still carries over the top, seam orientation. So, it's the sort of thing that has made Bryce Miller successful. It's the sort of thing that has made Brian Wu successful. Now, Brian Wu, and I've said this elsewhere, is such an outlier from a launch trait perspective. I'm not going to make that comparison at all, but I would say like Griffin Hughes is maybe a budget Jack Leiter type of a player, where it's not the best frame, it's not the biggest guy in the world, but he can generate value with the fastball alone. And if you would have asked me at the end of March or early April, Griffin Hughes was the type of guy that was going to go at the back of the second round. He was getting that sort of steam. So fatigued a little bit as the year went on, and I think it pushed him into that third or fourth round range for most teams. But still, I think this is like the prototype that Seattle has done well developing. Mason Peters, I missed. I totally missed on Mason Peters. I had him way lower on my board. He was on my board, but way lower. Dallas Baptist was a school that was very, very difficult to crack the rotation this year. They were stacked in the rotation. And, Peters at the beginning of the season was pitching out of the eighth inning. So it's left-handed. It is kind of undersized at 5'11". Fastball's up to 97 with serious hop, and it is an absolute hammer breaking ball, hammer curveball, up to 86, 87 miles an hour. So it's two pitches mostly right now. The thing that I'm going to be interested with Peters is, he's 5'11", but he gets well above average extension. He has flashed a cutter and a changeup in the past. So, we'll see whether or not Seattle wants to give him the opportunity to pitch in a rotation, or if he's just going to move quickly into a seventh or eighth inning role. And if that's the case, I think he could be in Seattle at the end of 2026 if they just think he's a bullpen arm.
So my Tim Collins comp, little unfair.
Little light. Yeah, a little bit bigger arm than that. But I mean, you're talking about that sort of a role.
Sure.
Nice.
I want to talk a little bit about Corbin Dickerson. Just hearing about this guy, he became one of my favorite picks later on in this draft. Obviously, he only did it for the 1 year at Indiana. He didn't really get a chance to play at Louisville. That's where he was, right before Indiana.
Yeah.
Hearing the profile kind of reminded me. I don't know how accurate this is, but it kind of sounded a little Jose Siri-ish. What do you think about Corbin Dickerson?
Yeah, I don't know if Jose Siri is probably fair. I think the thing about Siri is it's an elite glove. Like Siri is such an outlier defender that it's kind of hard to slap that on anybody. But to your point, like it's big raw power, very legitimate raw power. The chance to hit 20 to 25 homers if you give him 600 plate appearances. The glove is legit. I don't know if it's a 70. I think it's a 6. For sure, he's got center field traits. It's a plus runner. He's going to steal bags for you when he gets on. But the thing with Dickerson, it's the reason that he lasted until the 5th round is, he was even telling people in Phoenix at the combine, like, I don't have a great feel for hitting the breaking ball. I don't have a great feel for hitting the slider right now. He kills fastballs, and to Dickerson's credit, if the pitch is in the zone, he's hitting it. But he's going to have to learn an approach that gets him into ambush counts. He's going to have to learn an approach that, and just the ability to pick up spin out of the hand. He's got to learn to hit the breaking ball. So everything is there for this kid to be an impact player. But you got to learn how to hit the breaking ball. And I'm afraid to tell you, it's just going to get tougher the further you get up the ladder.
Yeah. So a name that you threw out a couple of times on a couple of the Mariners picks was Paul Sewald, with both Lucas Kelly out of Arizona State and then Casey Hentz out of Arizona. You even texted me after the Lucas Kelly pick, and you were like, dude, this guy is fun. So tell us a bit more about both of those guys.
Boy, they have really gone after this player, whether it be free agency, minor league deals, drafts. Like, Casey Hintz is, I'll start with Casey Hintz. Casey Hintz is literally Paul Sewald.
He kind of looks like him in the face.
He
too.
looks like Paul Sewald. He's got the stutter step, you know, as he comes to set on the mount. Like it's the Paul Sewald delivery. It's crazy. Yeah. He's really, really small. So we'll see whether or not he's ever going to be a guy that can get up to like 96 like Sewald did. But Hintz is like 90 to 91 and he's up to 93, but it's the exact same stuff, exact same delivery. Four-seamer at the top, sweeper running away. He'll be fun. Like he's like 170 pounds. So let's see what that looks like, you know, after high performance camp and like a couple of sandwiches, maybe. Yeah. Lucas Kelly is way more high octane. Now, I got a little bit of flack because what I tweeted for Kelly in like April, when I tweeted about him, 99 at the top of the zone, like one of the most FU fastballs you'll ever see in the history of Twitter. He's mostly 93 to 96, but that was the last pitch of the game. Lower slot, explodes at the top of the zone. It's a little bit more violent than Paul Sewald, but kind of the similar angles and approach. It's almost like a slightly more souped up version of Casey Legumina, who's, you know, providing a similar type of role. So I'll be interested to see with Kelly specifically, can the Mariners get him to a place where you throw him out there in the 7th or the 8th inning and you get him strong enough and he's like 95 to 97 from that slot? Because if they can, pretty nasty and it shouldn't be swept under the rug. I'm pretty sure this is a guy that walked like 8 hitters in 30 innings at the back end of the Arizona State ball game. So this is not the type of player that, you know, needs refinement and, we got to teach him how to throw strikes and keep him in the zone and not get in trouble. Like, he can probably pitch in Double-A right now and find some success. So they keep going for this type of a player, and they really want to find magic in a bottle again.
How would you compare Kelly to Hunter Cranton?
Just totally different players in terms of like stuff and the way that they move. Like Hunter Cranton is so far over the top with a very prototypical four-seam hopping fastball. It's more. Hunter Cranton is more like Ryan Stanek, the way that he attacks players with his fastball. It's better fastball value than Stanek. Obviously not the same changeup, but enormous fastball. Lucas Kelly is going to be a guy that gets outs because of the uniqueness and the angles and the deception and things like that. I'll put it this way, in a way simpler term, Cranton overpowers people and Lucas Kelly just kind of ties you in knots.
More from our conversation with Joe in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. I mean, you're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON to get started. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're here with Joe Doyle talking about the Mariners draft. We'll also talk a little bit about the deadline later on, just the state of the farm in general. But Joe, there's a couple of guys that I still haven't been able to gather a ton of information on that I just want to see if maybe you have some notes on them. Colton Shaw, Danny Macchiarola, I think that's how you would pronounce that, and then Dusty Revis. Any thoughts on either of those or any of those three guys?
Yeah, you know, I don't know anything on Shaw. Macchiarola is a very typical back-end starter. I don't want to say org filler type, but potential number 5 up and down. Dusty Revis, I think he goes by Dusty. I know his name is Dustin. He's interesting. He's redshirt sophomore at Western Carolina, redshirted due to a stress fracture, but kind of came on this past season, 7-1 record in 2024. .438 ERA. I'm just reading the report that I wrote up on him in May. 92 to 95, touching 97 with sink, upper 80s to low 90s after like the third or fourth inning. So we'll see whether or not he's going to be a guy that, pitches out of the rotation, or if he's going to be a guy that they just slam into the bullpen right away. But it's a mid-80s slider, 2-plane break, big whiff rates in 2024 and 2025, and he's been throwing a changeup more this past season. So doesn't have a true swing and miss pitch outside of the slider, and durability and his ability to maintain velocity is something that will probably come up in professional baseball. But, I think at worst with Dusty Rivas, you're looking at a potential swingman or a guy that, pitches at the back of the front of the bullpen in the fifth or sixth inning. So I will say this, and I think this is important. Seattle has found a lot of success specifically in the Carolinas over the last handful of years with these small school guys, whether it be, in trades or signing a guy like Rivas. So I would keep an eye on him because, they seem to have a pretty good feel for scouting that area.
Colby?
Yeah. Kind of a bigger picture question here. If you had to buy stock in one of these prospects, like, factor in odds and, the low buy-in costs and all that stuff. But if you had to buy stocks in one of these prospects to really hit, who are you taking?
If you're talking bang for your buck, it's probably Jackson Steensma for me. You get him in the 9th. I had him going in the 5th or 6th round. He missed all of this season with TJ, but as we've seen, these guys that come back from injury, like the hit rate is going up and up and up. And this is a 6'5", 250-pound starter that was running big chase rates and big whiff rates, and he's got 4 pitches. And, it's the type of guy that Seattle has done really well developing over the last handful of years, and wouldn't surprise me at all if Steensma, and it's, I should add importantly, you get a legitimate starting pitching prospect in the 9th round, 4 pitches, strikes, big frame, durable outside of the injury, of course. But if they turned him into a number 5 pitcher, look what they did with Logan Evans. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Anything surprise you about any of these numbers that have come out on the deals for the prospects?
Not really. I think perhaps the most surprising was probably Cade Anderson at $8.8 million. You have to wonder what sort of opportunities for contracts he had at 1 and 2. Because 8.8, they're saving $700,000 with the number 3 pick, a guy that was being talked about as the number 1 pick. But as we've seen, Seattle probably called Anderson's agent and said, Ethan Holiday's on the board. We know he's not going 4. You can risk it and see if you can get a better number at 5 with the Cardinals. You probably won't. Here's 8.8. So I think the fact that they were able to get Cade Anderson at a slight discount, I don't even know if surprising is the right word, but I guess to the general public, it probably is.
Yeah. We can only guess, but do you think the changes that happened at the top for the Nationals, right before the draft, had any impact on how things went down?
I think in retrospect, they massively did.
Okay.
I think massively did. I podcasted about this. Mike Rizzo and Scott Boras, very, very good friends. I'm friends with a lot of people in the organization that are still there in the scouting department. It sounds like it was pure chaos for a week, trying to get the new interim GM up to speed with all the players. And because the interesting thing is, the interim GM that was brought in, it wasn't like Rizzo. He didn't have a scouting background. He was in baseball ops. He was in, trades and things like that. So he had no knowledge of their process. So I think I would have been stunned if they did not select a Scott Boras client at number 1 if Mike Rizzo was still there. And you just look at what they did in 2024 with Seaver King cutting a massive deal, getting Luke Dickerson. That's what they wanted to do again. And I think it's going to serve them well because Eli Willits is a really good player.
Yeah. Let's talk quickly about some of these other catchers the Mariners drafted. Grant J, I know there's like some thought that he might just wind up in a corner, but he's listed as a catcher, another Dallas Baptist guy, by the way. So they double dip in that well. And then Luke Heyman out of Florida, who they actually gave considerable amount over slot there at pick 14 or in the 14th round rather. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Grant J is really interesting. It's a little bit like the kid from, oh man, I'm trying to remember his name now. The kid that barely played last year, where it's like
Grant Nip?
tons of, yeah, Grant Nip. They're
Okay.
both named Grant. Like, what are you doing,
Mhm.
Scott Hunter? Come on, man. You're killing me. Yeah, similar to Grant Nip. Like, there's a ton of swing and miss for Grant J, but it's mammoth power. It's, I think, a better chance to catch than people are probably giving him credit for. He hits the ball very, very, very hard. So we'll see what that ends up becoming. I think it's probably more of a first base or corner outfield, role with what they've got in the organization, be it Luke Stevenson or Luke Heyman or Cal Raleigh or Harry Ford. Heyman is interesting. Heyman walked away from 6th or 7th round money in the 2024 draft to go back to Florida and chase, a title for the Gators. This is a pretty good pick. Like, he had a little bit of a down year this year. He was a little bit better in certain respects in 2024. But yeah, I think he's a better chance to catch than Grant J, and same amount of power and a slightly better hitter. So I said this on TJ and Lyle's podcast. This team, regardless of whether or not they moved Harry Ford, was desperately thin in terms of catching prospects and depth. And I think they did a really, really nice job filling that void.
Love it. All right. Before we move on, is there anyone else that I haven't asked you about that we should be talking about? Like, are we sleeping on Isaac Lyon or Aiden Torek or anyone like that?
I mean, I don't think they're going to sign him, which is a shame. But Griffin Stieg would be the one that I would watch out for. He missed all of 2024, but it's one of the best sinkers in the class, like point blank period. People were talking about him going in the 3rd or 4th round before, going out with injury. So it feels a little bit like the Brian Walters selection from 2024, where it's like another insurance pick that goes alongside Cam Appenzeller. He's committed to transfer to Alabama, which is even more leverage in his back pocket. But if Seattle can find a way to cobble up the money to get Stieg into the organization, that would immediately become a pretty fun, pretty high end relief prospect that could move pretty quickly with some of the metrics that he's got.
Love it. Colby, anything else on the draft before we move on to deadline stuff and farm stuff?
No, I think we're good. Okay. You feel like pumping up Nicky Becker anymore, or you feel like you've done that?
Well, Nicky Bats.
Yeah.
So my question now is he going to go by Nick now that he's a professional? Because he's told me and scouts and everybody along the trail his name is Nicky, and I love that we had a prospect named Nicky, and I just want it to be Nicky. Yeah. I think that's a lot more fun. Nicky Sticks, that's a sick nickname. So, he's crazy tooled up. Like, truly, it's big size. He can run, he can hit for power, he can really throw. If he hits, you got a potential star on your hands. And if he doesn't, then, there's a million guys like Taylor Trammell who have insane tools, and it never truly comes together. So big fan of him, and he'll be a fun one to watch too.
Our conversation with Joe continues in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Mariners listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE.com/LOCKEDONMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Again, that is openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're here with Joe Doyle. Just talked about the draft. Now let's dive into the Mariners farm and also talk a little bit about the deadline. Joe, when we last had you on, Laz Montes and Michael Arroyo had just gotten their promotions to AA. Now they've been up there for a couple of weeks and they both have been awesome. So just what have been your thoughts on both of those guys and what they're doing right now?
Man, I can't be happier for Laz. I can't be happier for the Mariners organization. You know, you shift a 20-year-old with swing and miss concerns up to Arkansas, and you have to worry. Like, you have to wonder, like, where does this thing plateau? Where does it run out of steam? Where does he run into a level of competition that his approach can't match? We just haven't seen that yet. We haven't found that level yet. He is having no issues at all in Arkansas, despite the kind of wonkiness and the moving parts in the swing. He's barreling up everything he's seen, both lefties and righties. The fact that he walked in the futures game against a kid, I think it was Alex Clemmie, throwing 98 from the left side with angle, and he was taking his G-hacks too on some heaters that were in off the plate. I was like, hey man, can you not like blow up your wrist in Atlanta? It'd be great if you could just like take a walk. It takes his walk. But no, like I've said it before, I do think the path to Laz Montes being a valuable big leaguer is going to be almost exclusively through the bat. And he is just showing more times than not, he's capable of being a guy that potentially is a 125 to 140 WRC plus stick. So really excited about that. Arroyo, I obviously like as a prospect. He can hit. He can really, really hit. I just wonder with the organization where it's at in terms of infielders, you have to wonder if he is going to be deadline fodder, right? Like Emerson is probably going to get a cup of coffee in September of 2026. You have Cole Young at second base already. You're more than happy with Ben Williamson at third base entering the 2026 season. If you trade for Suarez and he leaves in the offseason, like you've got options on the infield. And, you know, maybe Arroyo is a DH. Maybe he is the, you know, next Dylan Moore. If Dylan Moore leaves, I'm not saying he's going to be that utility type, but maybe he's that guy on the bench that comes off the bench and, you know, hits in those spots that Dylan Moore hit for much of this season. So he's a tricky one for me to figure out future role, but man, they can both really hit.
Yeah, and they're both doing it at 20 years old. It's very
crazy.
Impressive. Yeah.
It's not being talked about enough how crazy it is that they're both 20 years old and exceeding expectations at Dickey Stevens.
Yeah. It's a very popular opinion that Harry Ford is going to get traded here in the next couple of weeks, and I think a lot of Mariners fans are ultimately cool with that because they feel he strikes, you know, a good balance of one, getting you something valuable in return, and two, while trading any high profile prospect, you know, stings to a certain degree, trading Ford wouldn't sting as much. So I guess, first of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, is there any other prospect in the system you view in a similar light? Maybe Michael Arroyo.
Yeah, probably, without getting long-winded, Arroyo would probably be the other one. But with Ford, I'll just say this. I'll keep it very, very short. So long as you are moving him to a team that provides, they value him as the catching prospect that he is, and you're not flipping him as a prospect that's viewed as a left fielder or a DH. I'm fine with it. You know, I don't think you should ever sell low on a prospect, even though you just acquired Luke Stevenson. So I think that the thing that we'll never know, and maybe we learn this at the deadline when a team does deal for him, the thing that we'll never know is how many organizations view him as a catcher. And until we know that, I think it's really, really next to impossible to attach a value to him in terms of like prospective trade offers.
Well, we just got some news, not trade related. Just get that out of the way.
Okay.
By the time you guys are listening to this, you know, but we want Joe's reaction to this. The Mariners have called up Brandon Garcia.
Ooh, nice.
I thought you guys were going to get quite a reaction from me for something.
No.
Oh no, I've never been on the air for live breaking news before.
Gonna get a Joe crash out.
Look, they traded Laz Montes for Ryan Helsley. How about that? Brandon Garcia is called up. Juan Burgos back to Tacoma, but
very cool. Friend of the show, Brandon Garcia. So congratulations to him. But what do you think about that?
It's probably
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably necessary. I don't think my reaction is so much attached to Garcia. I'm excited to see what Garcia can bring because the organization hasn't had many left-handed options this year, with Saucedo being essentially irrelevant for the year, and Gabe Spire apparently just being like a non-split guy that they're just going to throw against righties at this point. So
Mhm.
I think when I look at the move, Juan Burgos barely pitched. They added him to the roster. There was games Seattle was up 6-1, 5 days after his promotion, that they still didn't use him in the 6th inning. And so I've long thought, like, this guy must just be, break glass in case of emergency, and that's what we've seen. He's been in there for blowouts left and right, and they haven't put him into any leverageable opportunity at all. And that includes, if it's between Burgos and a guy that pitched yesterday in the 10th inning, they still go to the guy and double up. So excited to see what Brandon Garcia can provide to the team as a left-hander out of the bullpen. But I think Burgos was just filler at this point.
Yeah. So how would you rank the Mariners' needs going up to the deadline?
I think personally, and this is a hedge, so I apologize because it's bad radio. I think a leverageable bullpen piece and a bat of some consequence are both equal in need. I don't think this team can get out of, if they make the playoffs, I don't think this team can get out of the first round with the current bullpen setup that they've got. They're missing one more arm. And you can tell that. I mean, look at, Burgos was just sitting there. Like, they need someone else that they can go to. But at the same time, they need a stick in right field, or they need a stick at third base. They need a player that can create runs by himself. It can't just be, Ben Williamson shoots a squibber through the right side to keep the conga line moving. That's not going to work in September. So whether that is, Ryan O'Hearn, or it's Eugenio Suarez, or, take your pick. I think they probably need to acquire both of those needs at the deadline. And as they've said as much, they're willing to move assets, and they should be willing to move assets.
So I'm curious your perspective on this, because obviously you're a prospect guy. You know Jerry, his thought process maybe better than anyone else who's creating content covering the Mariners and just covering baseball in general. We've seen them be very aggressive at the deadline. They've gone out. They got the best starting pitcher who moved in 22. They got maybe the best bat that moved last year, but we've never seen them get super aggressive on the high profile rentals. We've seen them go out and get rentals, but that's been like the Justin Turners of the world.
Yep.
So really, to me, like, that's their only path to getting meaningfully better offensively, at least at the deadline, is going after the high profile rentals. But do you think they actually will do that?
Yeah, I do. I think they will. I think they'll stop short of being reckless. They've done a nice job over the course of, Jerry's tenure of balancing, going out and getting impact players and not being reckless. I'm not going to, I don't mean to throw the guy under the bus, but they haven't moved an Adam Jones for a player. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's going to be the case this year. And when you
what would reckless, sorry to interrupt, but what would reckless
Sure.
be to you? Like, let's use Eugenio Suarez for an example, right? Like, what would a reckless trade package look like for Eugenio Suarez?
I think a reckless trade package, if it was just Suarez by himself, would be a top 100 prospect and a lottery ticket. I don't think you move 6 or 6.5 years of Harry Ford for 2 months of a 35-year-old Eugenio Suarez. I think if they were to, like, if we're using Arizona as an example, if they were to attach a reliever that you could use in the 7th inning, that's also a rental alongside Eugenio Suarez, and that costs you Harry Ford, I think it makes total sense. But I don't think the Mariners should be in the market of trading Harry Ford for 45 games of Eugenio Suarez. Personally, that's just my philosophical, standpoint on it. I think you'd be better served moving Ashton Izzy and another piece for Ryan O'Hearn, and attacking this the same way and getting the same sort of output that you might have gotten otherwise. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think I guess that's the simplest way to put it is don't move a top 100 prospect for 40 games of one player. Just my 2 cents.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, Colby and I have talked about this ad nauseum. It's just the one thing that we haven't seen them do. So it's just kind of like, for me, it's kind of like I'll believe it when I see it, but also like this is their only route to take in my mind to get meaningfully better offensively. And I mean, so many people have said like they're going to be aggressive, and it's like, okay, well, I guess that's the only way that they're going to be aggressive, unless there's someone out there that's going to be available that we just don't expect.
I think, and really quick, Ty, I think that is the important thing to watch out for. This year feels ripe in baseball, not just for the Mariners. This year feels ripe for the mega deal. And I mean, Baltimore has fallen off the face of the earth, and they need to shake things up over there. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know whether it's, moving this person or that person, but if there was a year where a player like a Jordan Westberg was moved for, 3 top 100 prospects from Seattle, be it Harry Ford and Johnny Farmello, whatever, like
right.
it just feels like this trade deadline is trade deadlines in general are overdue for a mega deal, and the Ronald Acuna thing should just go away. But the Orioles, I think, are a perfect example of a team that clearly needs to shake the tree a little bit and re-rack the cards, re-rack the deck,
and trade one of their young core guys.
Maybe I don't think that they have the luxury of trading an outfielder because.
Right.
I would go after Kowser if I was Seattle. Like, I think that would be an awesome fit. But you look at Tyler O'Neill is hurt. Cedric Mullins is on the way out. Ryan Hearn is on the way out. You probably can't trade Kowser, but they have so many infielders and more on the way. I just look at a guy like Westberg and I say, does this make sense for everybody? If Seattle could give up a ransom.
Would you do it still if they're like, we want Bryce Miller?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would move Bryce Miller. I mean, the thing that makes Miller complicated is he's hurt, and I think we all know he's going to have surgery this offseason. So, how much of that do they really want to take on? But if you were to tell me, that Jordan Westberg was coming to Seattle for Bryce Miller, and I would throw in Harry Ford, I think that's a deal that Seattle would be interested in. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Durangelo Sanjo right now? Because you take away the left-handed numbers, and he's actually been pretty good this year, but I've heard nothing but mixed opinions really on him and his first full year in pro ball.
I think the tough thing with Durangelo is, and with the organization, is they're figuring out how the hell this whole switch pitcher thing is going to work. Like, he's clearly not dedicating himself to one side. It's led to walks. It's led to weird streakiness in terms of performances. Like, there have been outings where they've just thrown him as a left-handed pitcher for the first hitter of the game, and then they go to the right side for the rest without any rhyme or reason as to like how they're attacking those splits. So I think they should just move to him being right-handed full-time in 2026, get that control and command in order, because this will be a full year at Everett. He's going to pitch over 100 innings or close to it in Everett. He should be in Arkansas in 2026. And I think if you're, shipping him to Arkansas, you're probably bailing on the left-handed thing.
Well, Joe, thanks as always. This was great. As always, you were great as always. And let's do this again soon.
You got it, boys.
Thanks again to Joe Doyle for joining us today, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty and Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.